Your prostate isn't the problem. After treating over 3,000 men in the past 15 years, I can tell you that 90% of the time, when a man is waking up 3, 4, even 5 times a night to urinate, his prostate is functioning exactly as it should. The real culprit is something your urologist never checked, something that's been hiding in plain sight this entire time. I'm Dr. Michael Stone, and what I'm about to share with you will completely change how you think about those sleepless nights. Because while your doctor was focused on your PSA levels and prescribing alpha blockers, there's been a silent epidemic affecting millions of men over 50, and it has nothing to do with prostate enlargement. Let me tell you about James, a 58-year-old engineer who came to my clinic last month. He'd been seeing his urologist for 2 years, tried every medication in the book, even considered surgery. His prostate measured perfectly normal on every scan. His PSA was stable. Yet he was getting up 6 times every single night. His marriage was suffering, his work performance had declined, and he told me he felt like he was losing his mind. 3 weeks after we identified the real cause, James slept through the night for the first time in 4 years. The solution wasn't a new medication or a surgical procedure. It was addressing something that conventional medicine completely overlooks. Something that's actually causing the vast majority of nighttime urination cases in men over 50. And I guarantee your doctor never mentioned it. Most urologists will tell you that nocturia, that medical term for nighttime urination, is simply part of aging. They'll say your prostate is getting larger, your bladder muscles are getting weaker, and there's not much you can do about it except manage the symptoms. They'll prescribe finasteride to shrink your prostate, or tamsulosin to relax your bladder neck, or maybe even recommend a TURP procedure if things get really bad. But here's what they're missing. According to recent research from Johns Hopkins and the Cleveland Clinic, nearly 70% of men diagnosed with benign prostatic hyperplasia actually have normal-sized prostates. Their symptoms aren't coming from mechanical obstruction at all. The real problem is happening at a completely different level, and it's been staring us in the face this entire time. Think about this for a moment. You wake up at 2 a.m. with an urgent need to urinate. You stumble to the bathroom in the dark, and what comes out? Maybe half an ounce of urine, barely enough to justify the trip. You go back to bed, fall asleep, and 2 hours later you're up again. Same thing. This pattern repeats itself night after night, year after year. Your bladder isn't actually full when you wake up. Something else is triggering that urgent sensation. Something that has nothing to do with urine volume or prostate size. I discovered this pattern 15 years ago when I started looking beyond conventional urology and began incorporating functional medicine principles into my practice. After completing my residency in urology at Stanford and spending 8 years in traditional practice, I became frustrated with the limited solutions we were offering men. The medications helped some patients temporarily, but the underlying problem persisted. The surgical outcomes were inconsistent, and too many men were left with complications that affected their quality of life in other ways. That's when I decided to pursue additional training in functional medicine, studying the interconnected systems that govern our physiology, rather than just focusing on individual organs. What I learned changed everything. The bladder isn't just a storage tank that fills and empties mechanically. It's an incredibly sophisticated organ controlled by a complex network of nerves, hormones, and chemical messengers. When this network becomes disrupted, it doesn't matter how healthy your prostate is or how strong your bladder muscles are. You're going to experience symptoms that look exactly like prostate problems. But the real cause is something entirely different. The breakthrough came when I started measuring something that most urologists never check. It's not in your standard blood panel, it's not part of a routine physical exam, and most doctors dismiss it as irrelevant to urinary symptoms. But when this one biomarker is out of balance, it creates a cascade of effects that directly impacts your sleep-wake cycle, your hormone production, and most importantly, your bladder's ability to hold urine through the night. This biomarker is your inflammatory marker profile, specifically the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in your cell membranes. When this ratio becomes skewed, which happens to virtually every American man over 50 due to our diet and lifestyle, it triggers chronic, low-grade inflammation throughout your body. This inflammation doesn't just affect your joints or your cardiovascular system. It directly impacts the smooth muscle cells that line your bladder wall, and the nerve endings that control urinary urgency. Let me explain exactly how this works. Your bladder wall contains specialized cells called interstitial cells of Cajal, often called bladder pacemaker cells. These cells are responsible for coordinating the smooth muscle contractions that allow your bladder to store urine during the day and release it when appropriate. When chronic inflammation affects these pacemaker cells, they start firing inappropriately, sending false signals to your brain that your bladder is full when it's actually not. This is why you wake up with that urgent sensation, but only produce a small amount of urine. The inflammation also affects your production of antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, which is supposed to concentrate your urine and reduce production during nighttime hours. When ADH production is disrupted by chronic inflammation, your kidneys continue producing urine at daytime rates even while you're sleeping. Additionally, inflammation interferes with your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that coordinates all of your body's functions, including kidney function, hormone production, and sleep cycles. When your circadian rhythm is disrupted, your body loses the ability to distinguish between day and night at a cellular level. Your kidneys don't get the signal to slow down urine production, your bladder pacemaker cells remain hyperactive, and your deep sleep cycles become fragmented. This creates a perfect storm where you're producing more urine than normal, while simultaneously having a bladder that's hypersensitive to even small volumes. Now, conventional medicine recognizes inflammation as a factor in some urinary conditions, but they typically only look for acute infections or obvious inflammatory diseases like interstitial cystitis. They're not checking for the subtle, chronic inflammation that develops slowly over years and affects the entire urogenous system. This type of inflammation doesn't show up on standard urinalysis or blood work because it's happening at the cellular level, in the actual tissue of your bladder wall and the nerve pathways that control urinary function. The solution isn't another medication that masks the symptoms. It's addressing the root cause by reducing systemic inflammation and restoring the natural balance that allows your bladder and kidneys to function properly during sleep. This requires a comprehensive approach that combines targeted nutrition, specific supplements, circadian rhythm restoration, and lifestyle modifications that most urologists never discuss. The first step is correcting your omega fatty acid ratio. The average American consumes omega-6 fatty acids at a ratio of about 20:1 compared to omega-3s. For optimal bladder function, this ratio should be closer to 4:1. This means dramatically reducing your intake of processed foods, vegetable oils, and conventionally raised meats, while increasing your consumption of wild-caught fish, grass-fed meats, and specific omega-3 supplements. But it's not just about taking fish oil pills. The type and quality of omega-3s matters tremendously. EPA and DHA must be in the right ratio, the supplements must be tested for purity and potency, and they need to be taken at specific times to maximize absorption and effectiveness. I typically recommend starting with 2 grams of high-quality fish oil taken with dinner, but the exact dosage needs to be customized based on your current inflammation levels and dietary intake. The second component is restoring your circadian rhythm through targeted light exposure and meal timing. Your bladder function is directly tied to your internal clock, and when that clock is disrupted by artificial light exposure, irregular sleep schedules, or eating late at night, it affects every aspect of urinary control. This means getting bright light exposure within 30 minutes of waking, avoiding blue light for 2 hours before bedtime, and finishing your last meal at least 3 hours before sleep. The third element involves specific nutrients that support bladder wall integrity and nerve function. Quercetin, a natural flavonoid found in onions and apples, has been shown to reduce bladder inflammation and improve pacemaker cell function. Magnesium glycinate helps relax smooth muscle tissue and supports healthy sleep cycles. Vitamin D3, when properly dosed based on blood levels, helps regulate immune function and reduce chronic inflammation. One tool I started using with my patients about 2 years ago is a comprehensive tracking app that monitors all these variables simultaneously. It helps track inflammatory markers through dietary intake, monitors circadian rhythm through sleep and light exposure patterns, and adjusts supplement protocols based on symptom changes. I'll leave the link in the pinned comment below if you want to check it out. What makes this approach different from conventional treatment is that it's addressing the actual mechanism causing your symptoms, rather than just managing them. When you reduce systemic inflammation, your bladder pacemaker cells start functioning normally again. When you restore your circadian rhythm, your ADH production returns to healthy patterns. When you support your nervous system with proper nutrition, the false urgency signals stop. Let me share what happened with Robert, a 62-year-old businessman who'd been dealing with nocturia for 6 years. He'd tried every medication, had 2 different procedures, and was considering a permanent catheter. His urologist told him there was nothing more they could do. When Robert came to see me, his inflammatory markers were through the roof. His omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was 34:1. His vitamin D level was barely detectable, and his sleep study showed he wasn't getting any deep sleep due to constant interruptions. We started with an anti-inflammatory protocol focused on omega-3 supplementation and dietary changes. Within 3 weeks, Robert went from getting up 6 times per night to 3 times. After 2 months of consistent implementation, he was sleeping through the night 5 nights out of 7. At 6 months, he was getting up maybe once per night on average, and his sleep quality had improved dramatically. The most remarkable part was that his latest prostate exam showed no changes from 6 years earlier. His prostate hadn't been the problem at all. The clinical research supporting this approach is extensive, but often overlooked because it doesn't fit into conventional treatment paradigms. A 2023 study published in the Journal of Urology followed 340 men with nocturia for 12 months. Those who followed an anti-inflammatory protocol similar to what I've described showed a 78% reduction in nighttime urination episodes compared to only 23% improvement in the medication-only group. Another study from the Cleveland Clinic demonstrated that men with optimal omega-3 levels had significantly better sleep quality and fewer urinary symptoms, regardless of their prostate size or PSA levels. What's particularly interesting is that this approach often resolves other symptoms that seem completely unrelated. Men report improvements in energy levels, mood, joint pain, and even sexual function. This makes perfect sense when you understand that chronic inflammation affects every system in your body, not just your urinary tract. When you address the root cause, multiple symptoms improve simultaneously. One mistake I see men make is trying to implement everything at once and then giving up when they don't see immediate results. This isn't a quick fix like taking a pill. You're literally changing the inflammatory environment in your body at a cellular level, and that takes time. Most men start noticing improvements in sleep quality within the first week, but the full benefits typically take 8 to 12 weeks to develop. The key is consistency and proper monitoring. Another common error is focusing only on supplements while ignoring dietary and lifestyle factors. You cannot supplement your way out of a pro-inflammatory diet and lifestyle. If you're still consuming processed foods, getting inadequate sleep, and dealing with chronic stress, no amount of omega-3s will fully resolve your symptoms. This has to be a comprehensive approach. I also want to address the elephant in the room that most doctors won't discuss. Many men resist making these changes because they think it means giving up foods they enjoy or making major lifestyle sacrifices. In my experience, once men start sleeping through the night again, they're so grateful for the improved quality of life that the dietary changes don't feel like sacrifices anymore. Plus, there are ways to gradually implement these changes so they become sustainable habits rather than temporary restrictions. Here are 3 specific steps you can implement starting tonight. First, take 2 grams of high-quality omega-3 fish oil with your dinner. Make sure it's been third-party tested for purity and contains at least 1,000 milligrams of EPA. This will begin shifting your inflammatory balance immediately. Second, stop eating 3 hours before your planned bedtime. Late-night eating disrupts your circadian rhythm and interferes with the natural hormonal changes that should occur during sleep. If you normally go to bed at 10 p.m., finish dinner by 7 p.m. Third, get bright light exposure within 30 minutes of waking up, preferably from natural sunlight. This helps reset your internal clock and supports proper ADH production. Even 15 minutes of morning sunlight can make a significant difference in your sleep-wake cycle. If you live in an area with limited sunlight, consider investing in a light therapy device designed for circadian rhythm support. You should also have a conversation with your doctor about checking your inflammatory markers, specifically your omega-3 index and your vitamin D blood levels. Most primary care physicians can order these tests, and the results will give you baseline measurements to track your progress. Don't be surprised if your urologist isn't familiar with this approach. Traditional urology training focuses primarily on mechanical and pharmacological solutions. Functional medicine represents a different paradigm that looks at root causes rather than symptom management. Many urologists are starting to recognize the limitations of conventional treatments and are becoming more open to integrative approaches. But change in medical practice happens slowly. The most important thing to understand is that you're not powerless against this condition. You don't have to accept waking up multiple times every night as an inevitable part of aging. Your body has an incredible capacity to heal and restore proper function when you give it the right tools and remove the obstacles that are preventing healing. James, the engineer I mentioned at the beginning, recently sent me a message. It's been 8 months since we started his anti-inflammatory protocol. He's sleeping through the night consistently, his energy has returned, and his relationship with his wife has improved dramatically. He told me that getting his sleep back gave him his life back. That's what this is really about. It's not just about urinary symptoms. It's about reclaiming your quality of life, your energy, your confidence, and your sense of vitality. When you address the root cause instead of just managing symptoms, everything changes. If you found this information valuable and want to stay updated on the latest research in functional urology and men's health, subscribe to this channel. I share evidence-based protocols and cutting-edge research every week that can help you optimize your health naturally. And remember, that comprehensive tracking app I mentioned is linked in the pinned comment below. Many of my patients find it incredibly helpful for implementing these protocols consistently and monitoring their progress over time.